in regards to my environment minister, I have tremendous faith and confidence in my environment minister. And if people are having trouble getting along with him, maybe they need to look at their own approach to these big issues.
Tremendous faith and confidence in Stephen Guilbeault, that guy that climbed the CN Tower and broke into the Premier of BC's house, the convicted criminal. Wow, this guy is super right in there with that guy. Welcome to Canada Wide. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Let's have a listen to Trudeau. And there's George right there, that guy. Let's put a picture of him up after too. Let's have a listen.
Good
Hello.
to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Haven't seen you in a while.
Yes, exactly. Well, hopefully we'll see you at Stampede.
Every year.
Rick Bell, Post Media. What do you... I'm going to try to sneak in sort of a two-parter here, but it's going to be very quick. Number one, what do you say to people who aren't buying what you just said? Aren't buying your argument. And they're not just all conservatives or all politicians or all misinformation people. So what do you say to those people, including premiers, including Premier Smith, who aren't buying that argument? So you got to give us something more to try to convince people of that, because there's a lot of people who aren't convinced. They want to pause in April, etc. And this one's an easy one. Are you more or less likely to fire your environment minister because Premier Smith keeps saying you should fire your environment minister?
Listen, right now, everyone is stressed out with the cost of living. It is a stressful time. There are massive challenges around the world in terms of inflation, in terms of supply chains. There are wars going on in a way that is putting more pressure on people and emotional angst on a whole bunch of people in every community. There is uncertainties. We're still, in some ways, recovering from the effects of the acute pandemic that we just had. We're dealing with, countries getting more protectionistic in a whole bunch of different ways. There are real challenges in the world right now. And one of the challenges everybody is seeing is climate change. Alberta declared a start to its forest fire season in February this year. We had one of the worst years for wildfires ever, on top of some of the worst years for floods, and droughts in different parts of the country as well. The impacts of climate change are real. And they're not just environmental or, community-based, they're also economic. We are seeing that investors from around the world are looking to where they can rely on clean energy, where they can develop some of the climate solutions they have, where there's a focus on decarbonizing the processes that we have for whatever it is, so that there can be more competitiveness in a world that is adjusting to the fact that we're having to reduce our emissions of carbon in everything we do. Those are just the facts. The question is, what do we choose to do with that? What decisions do we make collectively to tackle this problem? Now, for decades now, as people saw the challenges with the environment, the political will just wasn't there because there wasn't enough support for it across the country. Who would want to actually, face a challenge that really is only going to hit a few decades from now? That'll be someone else's problem, is unfortunately the easiest way to respond to this. We don't have to do anything. It won't hit us now while I'm in office, so let's just push off the problem for more and more people to deal with. The problem is the fact that we pushed off this problem for decades already means it gets more and more expensive to make the changes that are necessary, not just to protect communities' quality of life, but also to protect our environmental opportunities and growth that we have. So the question becomes, does anyone really think you can build a strong economy for the future without, at the same time, fighting climate change and being responsible about the environment? The fact is, you cannot. You can't have a plan for the economy if you don't have a plan to fight climate change. So then the question becomes, well, how do you fight climate change? There are lots of different ways you can do it. You can bring in the heavy hand of regulations to force people to do different things. You can bring in different incentives and subsidies and rewards to invest in companies that are actually doing the right kinds of things. But that all involves the heavy hand of government weighing in on how we're going to do that. I prefer a cleaner solution, a market-based solution of saying, you know what? If you're behaving in ways that are going to cause pollution that is going to impact the whole community, you should pay for that pollution so the community then doesn't suffer the negative sides of it or have to clean it up on their own dime. That's what we do with people spewing water into wastewater from factories into streams. We say, no, 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 you're going to have to clean that up. You're going to have to be responsible for the pollution you create. So that's why putting a price on carbon emissions just makes sense, because a company that says, oh, you know what, I'm going to avoid paying that price by investing in a better type of technology, well, that just makes sense. And that company should be rewarded. And a company that says, no, I'm just going to continue to pollute, the fact that they wouldn't get dinged for that doesn't make sense either. So we said, pollution will have a price on it. But more than that, we know there's a lot of families across this country who don't have huge amounts of choices in terms of, oh, I'm just going to buy a much more fuel-efficient car. I'm going to replace my roof or my insulation or my windows. That's a hard investment to make. So we wanted to make sure that people who continue to not be able to change much in their behaviors would get that money back. And that's what we do with the price on pollution. But think about a family that does decide, oh, okay, you know what, we can get a slightly smaller car, or we're going to replace our windows, we'll go for the slightly more fuel-efficient windows. Well, they actually get more money back because they're spending less on that price on pollution. So it's a logical way to do things, but yes, it does require putting a price on things right now so that we can set ourselves up for success in the future. And that's an easy thing for short-term politicians, short-term thinker politicians, to say, oh, we'll get rid of the price. They don't talk about the fact that they're also going to get rid of that check, the Canada carbon rebate, that puts more money in the pockets of the vast majority of Canadians.
That is disinformation. This is Ontario and the net cost that you get back the checks. He is picking the one net cost fiscal impact only, the red one. He is not saying the orange one, net cost fiscal and economic impact. So he is not looking at the bottom line to the people, what they pay. And it is $478 more in Ontario average. He is picking the slower one, net cost fiscal impact only, at minus 100. That means you are getting more money back than you put in. He is deliberately not looking at the big picture and pushing his narrative, which is incorrect based on third-party analysis. So what he is saying is false. Let's continue.
Canadians. And they don't have a plan, or they don't talk about how they're going to actually use the heavy hand of government through regulations or through subsidies or some other way to pick winners and losers in the economy, as opposed to trusting the market. Now, your question, Rick, is sort of, well, that all makes sense. Why are so many people still against it? Well, you know, that's a question we all have to ask. But my job is not to be popular. My job, although it helps, my job is to do the right things for Canada now and do the right things for Canadians a generation from now. And that's what I've been focused on. And yeah, it's not always popular. But I know that doing the right things today, that support people today, that deliver that better future a generation from now, 2 generations from now, is going to make a huge difference in the path we take forward. In regards to my environment minister, I have tremendous faith and confidence in my environment minister. And if people are having a trouble getting along with him, maybe they need to look at their own approach to these big issues, as opposed to looking at what he's talking about, which is consistent with building a better future for everyone.
Next question.
to trusting the market.
They do have a
Now,
plan. It's just
your
he doesn't
question,
care
Rich,
what
is sort
it
of,
is,
well,
and he will
that
not
all
listen
makes
to
sense.
any
Why are
diverse
so many people
opinion
still
from
against it?
his
Well, you know,
own.
that's a
That
question
is
we
the
all have to
biggest
ask.
problem. If you
But
don't
my job
believe what he is
is
giving
not to
you,
be
then he
popular.
just calls
My
you
job,
names
oh,
and
it helps.
shuts you down.
My
He will
job,
not listen to anybody,
my job
and
is to
he
do the
only
right things for
obeys that
Canada
Stephen
now
Guilbeault, the convicted
and do the right things for
criminal.
Canadians
That guy that
a
doesn't want to
generation
build
from now.
roads and then has to claw it
And
back,
that's what I've
like
been
that
focused on.
guy. And
And
you ever
yeah,
hear him at the COP
not always
26
popular.
in Sharm
But I
el-Sheikh?
know
That one where he's
that
begging
doing the
them,
right
begging the
things
people
today
to
that
obey the
support people
1.5
today
degrees
that
Celsius. I have
deliver
that video
that better
on there
future
too. He's like
a
so
generation from now,
afraid
2
because they
generations
all
from
tell
now
him that
is
what
going
they
to make
really
a
thought about
huge
it.
difference in the
Let's
path
put
we
the
take
next video
forward.
up.